Last week was quite the week, and this week has been no different. There are a lot of things we need to talk about, and we're going to talk about it from the specific enemies within the church perspective on things. What we care about most is wokeness entering the church, understanding what does that mean? What does that mean? Not just in a general sense. We want to define things. We want to be a little bit more specific. We want to look at how this affects us as Christians. So let us get into this week's episode. Welcome to the Enemies Within the Church podcast. You can go to enemieswithinthechurch.com right now to view the documentary if you haven't already. If you have, go ahead and buy a few extra copies, give them out to your friends. You can also go to EWTC, Enemies Within the Church, EWTCnews.com to view the continued projects of Enemies Within the Church, which this podcast is a part of. Now, I'm your host, Kyle Witt. What are we talking about this week? Well, I want to mention one thing before we get into the episode proper, which is the Preston Sprinkle series. Yes, it is going to be continuing, most likely, depending on the rate I can finish the research. I'm trying to be very thorough. I'm trying to be very detail-oriented. I'm trying to get you the nice, broad breadth of what Preston actually believes and teaches. I'm trying to be both fair in my presentation, but also clear for you. So you have a very clear understanding of what he believes, what he teaches, and why it is problematic, to be a reference that you can take and you can talk with others about, others who are sympathetic to Preston or are followers of Preston. We want to have clear, detailed information collected, able to be used. So that is coming. We're still working on that. What are we talking about this week? Well, again, it's been quite the week after a previously large week. There are several things that we should touch on, and I think there's some good examples of things to launch off from to help us define, to clarify, and to talk about how we are to respond in a robust way that is effective. Now, on that front, I want to mention something. We need people in powerful faith in this country. Powerful faith. But I think we don't understand what powerful faith means anymore. We look at, you might say powerful faith, and you go to someone of academic importance, or you go to someone, an influential pastor, a wonderful speaker, a great, brilliant theologian. The problem is you're going to different categories. Now, those people may also be powerful people of faith, but you're going to different categories than faith. You're going to intellect. You're going to, theology and academics, they're both intellect. You're going to powerful oration. Someone who's a great speaker, whether that's a pastor or some other kind of speaking, or a great writer. And again, that might be a person who has a deep and robust faith, but we need people of powerful faith that's not locked behind. Hear me on this. Having powerful faith is not locked behind your education level or your specific skills in communication. It's not locked behind some of these things. We make heroes. This is where the problem comes, even from good people. We turn them into heroes because we look at them as if they're the people. They're the real movers and shakers when it comes to the spiritual battle that we're in. But that's simply not true. That's simply not true. They may be wonderful ralliers of faithful Christians, but faith is not tied to a big personality. Faith is not tied to again, your education, your skills, all these other things. Faith is something different. And for me, one of the most powerful people of faith that I know, both personally and just know of, is my grandma. She could not, I love her, but she's not an intellectual. She's not dumb by any means, but she's not an intellectual. She's not an academic. She's not a theologian. She's not a powerful speaker. She's not a powerful personality in general. She is just the stereotypical, humble grandmother. But she has a powerful faith. She has a faith that I look to and I say, I wish I had a faith like that. Compared to her, my faith is complicated. And I think this is something that we all need to examine ourselves on. Are we overcomplicating things? Do we need something else? Are we looking for some piece of knowledge and expecting that piece of knowledge to build up our faith? Now, it can be important things. I'm not dissing on knowledge. We talk about knowledge here a lot. We're trying to be informative with this podcast. So knowledge is important. But what she has is this unwavering faith that starts at 100%, resting on nothing else but the truth of the gospel. She knows that God is real. She knows that the Bible is his word. She knows that Jesus died for her sins. She knows that she has repented of her sins. She's put her faith into Jesus. She knows that she's saved. She knows that she's going to heaven. She just knows these things. Her faith is rests right on those. And then everything else gets built on top of that. I think for far too many of us, our faith is intertwined in the construction of our lives, not the first thing resting on that foundation of Christ, but as something more complicated. We use knowledge. We use, the latest evangelical best-selling book. We use so many other things to build up our faith, to prop up our faith, when all of those other things should be resting on a foundation of faith. And that is why my grandma's faith is so powerful. Now, she's also something incredibly, incredibly precious in the church that we do not respect enough. Yes, it's good to look to powerful theologians, but we need to look to those people of faith, the ones that are investing into the younger generations. My goodness. I mean, she's mid-80s. Is she technically late 80s now? But she's still involved in children's ministry at our church. It's a powerful thing. We got some great people at my church who are well advanced in years, 80s, if not pushing into 90s, that are involved in children's ministry, and it makes such an impact on the kids. Makes such an impact on the kids. Getting those kind of people, getting those people of faith that have that mature faith as well, that the wisdom of age. The Bible says that gray hair is a crown of wisdom. People that have that have earned that and have that robust, basic, quote, simple, but not simplistic faith. It is just, God is true. Nothing could ever shake her faith because there's nothing you could poke at that gets underneath her faith. It rests on Christ. It rests on an immovable surface. We need to protect those people. Now, I look at her and I go, I wish my faith was like that. But that's not the way that God made me. He made me as a little bit more of a complex person when it comes to just faith, when it comes to intellect, when it comes to, pretty much everything. It can be way too complicated at times. But he made me that way for a reason. It drives me forward. Drives me forward. When I saw a false gospel being pushed, when I was doing church planting at the North American Mission Board, the stubbornness that God built into me would not let it go, whereas so many other people would let it go. God made me the way he did for a reason. And though I look at my grandma's simple faith and I go, I wish I had that. I wish my faith was just that perfect. That it was just so correctly established. Not that I ever have doubts, not that my faith is in question or anything of that, but just the simple faith that is so much stronger. So much stronger. But God made me more complex for a reason, and one of those reasons is to protect people like my grandma. That's one of my biggest motivators in doing the work that I do here. It's one of the biggest motivators in doing this podcast is protecting people like my grandma. We need those people. And in turn, people like my grandma are doing serious work behind the scenes within churches, investing into the next generation, giving an example of mature faith, giving an example of a mature Christian woman, giving all these good examples, but beyond that, praying powerfully, praying in using that just deep, simple, grounded faith, putting it in action through prayer and praying for people like me and you and so many others. We need to protect those people because as a body, we need all the different parts. And I can look at my grandma and say, I wish I had some of the characteristics of her. But she's a different body part than I am. I have a different role, and I need to focus more on my role than I do on, I wish I had some of the characteristics of her or some other person. I can get motivated by that, but I cannot get to the point where I am longing for that. Because I'm getting off track of what I'm supposed to be doing. This is supposed to be an encouragement to you. An encouragement to you listening. Because we all have our gifts. I do want to encourage you to build your faith, to try and simplify it, to bring it down to the level where it is resting just simply, fully on Christ. And our knowledge is then built on top of that. Our theology is built on top of that. But I get it. All of us have been designed differently. All of us have been designed with different intent by God for the service that we are to render. And some people's gifting is their faith. Some other people's gifting is apparently stubbornness. But God uses it. God uses it. Know where you're at and know where your weaknesses are. Defend your weaknesses and use your giftings. Use your strengths. But I want to encourage you, we need to defend people like my grandma. That is one of the biggest things that motivates me, because those are the people that all the different woke pastors and influencers and everything else inside the church are trying to take advantage of. Because they know that those people, you get those powerful people of faith, that simplistic faith, if you can deceive them into believing that you're something good, you completely just derail this country. Completely derail this country. Waking up those people of faith, defending them against that nonsense, getting them to understand not the complexities of everything, but getting them to understand that there are real issues right now and getting them to see the need and go, oh, okay, I'm going to act on that. I'm going to respond to that. That's where real change is going to come from. So if you're one of those people, great. Pray, realize the danger, act. If you're not one of those people, if you're someone that's more like me, and you have this deep desire to learn more about the Marxist infiltration of the church right now, learn about all the different things that are going on, the complexities, the details, refute things, all of that, well, your job is to defend those people. And if we work together like an efficient body, like an efficient military force, like an efficient, name any innumerable other analogies. If we work together like that, we still have so much power. So much power. But there's a third type of person, something we all need to be doing, but there's a third type of person that we need to talk about. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later because we need to get more into responding to what's happened this week. But I thought that establishing that foundation of faith would be really useful. And changing gears quite a bit. The Olympics started up. And instead of having they start off the torch ceremony, instead of having a man and a woman holding the torch, they have a man and a man dressed in drag. It is shocking to me. This isn't even the main thing I want to talk about, but it's shocking to me how society, as it goes downhill, always inevitably attacks women. Always. Every single time, and it is disgusting. And this time it is horrifying because they're literally trying to replace women. Simply replace them. That is horrifying. They want to replace women in public, and in private, they want to replace women by getting them to murder their children. Well, how does that replace women? It removes... So you're removing the two key aspects of what makes a woman a woman. One is the identity itself. You've stripped them of the identity of woman and you've given it to men. And the other, going off of that, they have a crossover in biology, but the other side, you're getting rid of the distinct characteristics of a woman that a man cannot emulate, and that's motherhood. This is horrifying. How are they able to do this? Do you ever stop and kind of think about that? How could you get someone to how could you get the society to so fully hate itself, to be so suicidal? And you wonder why suicide rates are so high when we have that suicidal attitude. We hate ourselves. Have you ever thought about just how extreme the reality we're facing right now is when it comes to just how radically off base, to the point where we hate ourselves, the point where we celebrate the deaths of ourselves. But then there's still a part of us that realizes that death is a tragedy. It's horrifying. But the main point of bringing up the drag Olympics is to point out just where society is on that big of a stage. It's being used to promote it. It's being used to advance things radically. But I want to ask you a question. Is that wokeness? I think, most commentary you're going to see immediately say yes. But we need to understand that that word means something. I think there's still a chance to recover the meaning of the word from being meaningless to actually meaning something. But we can't ascribe wokeness to everything that is in some degree to the left. Now, do I believe that the ideologies behind pushing a man in woman's clothing, a parody of women's appearance, do I believe that the ideology, the people behind that, their ideology, do I believe that they are Marxist in nature? Yes. But just because a man dresses as a woman does not immediately mean the reason he's doing it is because he holds to a Marxist worldview, specifically a cultural Marxist worldview. No, it doesn't. And that's one of the things we need to do. If we're going to be more effective in responding to the nonsense that we see right now, we cannot just call everything woke. The word needs to have meaning, because the big threat that we're facing right now is not just simply things. It's specific ideologies. The ideologies are what are tearing everything down, not individual things. Now, these ideologies express themselves. That's the whole purpose. They want to express themselves through individual things happening. But that does not mean that everything is then attached to that ideology. We need to separate, and we need to pull back the curtain and see, okay, what's behind this? I think the most clear example, I believe I said this last week as well, is the whole LGB without the T movement and the Gays Against Groomer organization. That's an example of something right there that is explicitly not coming from a Marxist worldview. They're coming from a classical liberal worldview, but it's not coming from a Marxist worldview. Now, if you want to get to the Marxist side of things, that's the LGBT movement, which is rooted in queer theory, a companion to critical race theory. Both of are expressions of critical theory, which is an expression of cultural Marxism, or Marxism being applied to a culture rather than simply a political economic system. Though they bring that in as well. We need to be careful, and we need to label the things that are in fact Marxist. We need to label those Marxist, but the things that are of another ideological origin, we need to be clear about that. This will help us in so many things. This will help us in not confusing ourselves. Because we can look at the whole Gays Against Groomer movement and we can see some positives in the sense that they realize the danger of the whole transgender movement, specifically rooted in queer theory, rooted in Marxism. They're the old school, we just want to, get rid of the restrictions on us and we just want to be left alone. We just want marriage. We're not coming for anything else. They were actually being honest by and large back when stuff like that was being said. The problem is the movement was being infiltrated and this new movement based on queer theory was being built. And once the Gays Against Groomer side, the LGB side, got what they wanted, well, the cancer spread, it was ready. It metastasized. It went forth. The Marxists took over. They love to piggyback off of liberal movements. It's so easy because it gets you halfway down the court. So just ride with the liberals until they're no more use and then cast them to the wayside and move forward. We see this in politics too. I've talked several episodes ago about the Democratic Socialists of America, how they're doing the same thing to promote socialism, to promote Marxism through infiltration of the Democratic Party. Now, I think we're going to see some pretty significant movement from them this November. I would not be surprised in the slightest. Here's my current prediction of things. I think we're going to see a pretty significant movement, a red movement. I'm not going to call it a wave, but I think we're going to see some pretty significant action when it comes to Republicans getting elected. But we're going to see this reduced Democratic Party have an increase in alternatives within it, alternatives to liberalism, as liberalism has been rapidly dying to the point where arguably both parties are just as filled with liberals. But I think we're going to see a pretty significant movement of the Democratic Socialist America and other similar Marxist groups making advances into the Democratic Party as they get weakened this November. We're going to see a greater number formally join political parties like the DSA or informally align with them or others. Again, go listen to the whole episode on the Democratic Socialist America and how they're subverting things. I do want to come back to them at some point because we need to talk about, we talk more on the political side of things, but we need to talk about the religious side of things because they specifically target evangelicals and like very openly. But we need to be careful about applying the term woke. We need to apply it specifically to the Marxists. Now, speaking of Marxists and speaking of the Democratic Socialists of America, speaking about woke things, should we make sense of the pro-Hamas? Like, at this point, you can't even call them ceasefire rallies or rallies for Palestine, any of those kind of things. The one going on in DC right now, that's just blatantly pro-Hamas. Like, they're not even really hiding it. They're very open about, you could go look at innumerable pictures of graffiti and chants and other things, and they're openly talking about Hamas, openly tagging historical things. I mean, it's just tragic. I got to a point where I stopped looking at pictures and videos because it's just so... There's only so much you can look at one time without it just really dragging you down for the rest of the day. But it's tragic to see what they're doing to America, to American heritage, to great figures of the past, to great artifacts of this country's history. It's tragic. It's tragic that they're promoting violence on those things, covering them with violent graffiti. Horrifying. But is that woke? Well, is supporting Palestine, quote, Palestine, what even is Palestine? That's a whole can of worms. For the second, right now, I'm using their term, Palestine. But is supporting Palestine inherently woke? No. I mean, there have been plenty of people that were obviously not Marxist that support Palestine. Now, is there inarguably links between Palestine and Marxist groups and Marxist states and all sorts of... Yes, there is. I'm saying individual in America supporting Palestine, thinking they are the victim in general. You can't really claim that about... can't claim that this year. But does that make them woke? No. So is the rally we're seeing, is it a woke rally? Or is it just a... Okay, I'm going to stop saying rally because it's a riot. It's a riot that is produced more damage than, than January 6th did. Yet, just double standard. Double standard. blatant double standard, radical double standard there. And people have commented on that. So we're going to focus on other aspects of it. But is it inherently a woke rally? Well, we can look at little details of it and we can see that, yes, by and large, it is. What are they, what are their rallying cries? What are their ideologies presented? What are all these different things? But I think one of the simplest ways to do it, and we're finally going to get something on the screen. If you're watching, I haven't put too much on the screen, not as much as I normally do, but we're finally going to get to something because I mentioned the Democratic Socialists of America. And if you listen to the episode that I did on them, you'll already know that they are heavily involved in either organizing or joining in and supporting and kind of co-opting Hamas rallies. This shouldn't be a surprise. That's how Marxists operate, through, quote, rallies, violent rallies, and promoting ideologies that agree with them. But you can see here, if you're looking on the screen, for those listening, I'm explaining everything, even if I say C. This is from the Metro DC DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, which, despite having democratic in the name, that's one of those. They're not. Why does, not every, but most Marxist state, like Democratic People's Republic of, and then whatever the country is, they like the word democratic. But, this is from the DC area chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. You can see that they're promoting an Arrest Netanyahu protest scheduled for Israeli Prime Minister's address to Congress on July 24th. Now, obviously, we're past July 24th, even when I'm recording this. I'm recording this on the 25th. So we're past that. We're already seeing the riot that they helped start. And if you're looking on the screen, you can see right here, they have a little picture of 4 people and a speech bubble coming from all 4 of them with a Marxist fist in the middle. If you had any questions. But what do they say about this? In the midst of Israel's horrendous ongoing genocide in Gaza, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to address Congress on July 24th, one of the U.S. government's most flagrant displays of approval yet for Israel's war crimes. Mass protests are scheduled in response on Wednesday, July 24th at 11 a.m. Protesters will gather to surround the Capitol for an Arrest Netanyahu rally. Again, January 6th double standard. Showing the world that American people support Palestine, not war criminals. This is why we need to be aware of organizations like this. This is what they do. They either start these rallies or they co-opt them. They're using them as recruiting beds either way. And they're using it to advance their ideology. Whether the rally, we'll have a theoretical rally in Smoshington, BC. And over in Smoshington, they're organizing this rally. We have a group of people that organized a rally, and their goal is to raise awareness because they believe that there should just be a mutual ceasefire, and they believe that both sides are wrong. That's the tone a lot of people try and take. Let's just ignore the fact that that's an impossibility for a massive number of reasons, and just geopolitically ignorant. But you have this rally that's organized by those people in Smoshington. Well, the DSA finds out about it. They organize their people because organization is their whole thing. They go there, they take it over, and suddenly the chants change from ceasefire to free Palestine. Hamas is a liberator, down with the oppressors, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And because of the way that a rally works, especially for modern times, but just in general throughout history, but especially susceptible in modern times, when those chants start going on, the people that are there start chanting it regardless of their beliefs. And it starts to shape how they believe. This is their goal. This is their intent. But what do we see right above this? Praying for Armageddon screening, Saturday, July 20th. The Metro DSA Internationalism Working Group and Jewish Voice for Peace are screening Praying for Armageddon, a documentary exploring the bizarre and politically powerful relationship between Zionism and American evangelical apocalypticism. This is so many they speak in buzzwords, but they do it intentionally, and it works. After the film, we will have a discussion with Pastor Jen Hostler of the Washington City Church of the Brethren, and a happy hour nearby for DSA and JVP members to get to know each other. DSA members and community members are invited to RSVP here. So pointing out, Jewish Voice for Peace is the, quote, Jewish, although you don't have to be Jewish to be a part of it, which is kind of an intentional, again, it's like the Democratic Socialists putting Democratic in there. They're not Democratic at all. But Jewish Voice for Peace is a Marxist organization. They don't advertise themselves that way, but they promote the idea of oppressor-oppressed dynamics within specifically the context of Palestine, of imperialism, of the need for the marginalized Palestinians to rise up, that things like October 7th are a justified response, and they critique capitalism. So you tell me which ideological framework all of that fits into best. But we see them coming together to try and do this, but then we also see a supposed pastor joining in there as well. And the whole documentary itself is primarily aimed at changing the minds of Christians or supposed Christians. They want to get in and they want to change you. They want to change anyone and everyone wherever they can get. This is why people describe things, Marxism, in such insidious terms, viral terms, in such infiltrative terms, because that's what they do. That is explicitly what they do. So, yes, it is okay to call the riots at the Capitol right now, it's okay to call those things Marxist. It's okay to call those things woke. Does that mean every single person there fits into that ideological framework? Not necessarily, but by and large, it is, and it's being co-opted even more so by organizations, Marxist organizations, openly Marxist organizations, trying to change people through that, trying to pressure the government. They're doing exactly what is, the left claims about January 6th. And they know that they can get away with it because they know they have the support of a cowering left that is desperately trying to hang on to power. Well, the right is coming, the supposed right is coming and gobbling them up. We looked at that last week. Where they at the at the Republican National Convention, they're stripping things out of the platform like biblical marriage and abortion. And they're bringing in porn stars supporting feminism and openly supporting abortion. They're bringing in pagan religions. They're trying to appeal to the left. They're trying to appeal to we talked about the whole LGB without the T movement. They're trying to bring those people in. But those are still a very problematic group. Why are we bringing the left into the supposed right? Which is leaving the left with an ever smaller slice of pie. Now, why aren't they losing political... why aren't they losing seats in government? Well, it's because they're pulling in from the... Well, they're being taken over more so, but they're pulling in from the other side things like the DSA and other Marxist organizations. Sometimes, again, openly a part of a different party like the DSA, just running on their Democratic ticket, or just ideologically. This is one of those terrifying things. As the right gobbles up the old left, gobbles up the classical Marxists, classical liberals, they're empowering and growing the Marxists. They're encouraging the remainder of the left to pull in those people. Now, speaking of things like that, what else happened this week, politically speaking, that's big and important and we should talk about a little bit? At the minimum, we need to mention because it fits in with so many things and we need to be aware, which is Biden dropping out of the race, or very realistically, someone else dropping out for him. And I don't mean that in that's not a conspiracy theory. Is it a proven thing? No, but with how senile Biden is, it's not a leap. At the minimum, it's not a leap. Either way, it doesn't matter because Biden's out and Harris has got the endorsement. I was telling a young guy that was asking me about some of this stuff, what do I see going on? And I was given my predictions of what the political state of things was going to look like. And it was predicated on Biden staying in the race. But I said, and he asked, well, what if Biden drops out? Is it going to be Harris? I'm like, the only way it's going to be Harris is if she steps in to be the hero. And that's what they've been slowly setting her up to be, the one that kind of is taking the reins and protecting the country as Biden is fading away. Now, is Biden gone? No. Is Biden really there? Also, no. It's a strange time right now. It's like they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. Who's going to get their way? So we've seen a complex response so far. There are factions that are trying to vie for power to see whose candidate is going to be. Who's going to be the one that runs. So far, we don't know who the other contenders are. We just know the one main contender. But it's fascinating to see that it's been such a slow response to support Harris. But Harris is such a patsy for the left, and more so the progressive side of things and Marxist side of things. She'll support whatever. She is the definition of a useful idiot. She's not the kind of person you want in power. She's more problematic than Biden. But she's also, without making her into a hero, she's less electable. Less electable and more impeachable. If they push Harris forward, it's probably going to be as big, if not a larger landslide for Trump than it would have been with the current state of Biden. It's almost like they want Trump to get elected. It's almost like they feel they can thrive more under the pressure and radicalize people. It's almost like we need to be aware of these kind of things and be aware of their tactics so we can better counter them. But this is something that we need to be on the lookout for. But what is actually going to happen? Who's going to be the one that runs and how are they actually going to run the candidate? There's not much time, so it's going to be dramatic. Whatever they choose to do, it's going to be dramatic. Again, with the intent of radicalizing everyone, both sides. They want to see everyone as radically divided as they possibly can so that they can come in and collect. Again, look at the strategy of the DSA, taking over these rallies to then promote Marxism. Sometimes you got to cause a little chaos. to get your way. But speaking of causing chaos and political infighting, should at least mention that the Southern Baptist Convention, again, caught a lot of national attention when the head of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the ERLC, formerly headed by Russell Moore, now headed by Brent Leatherwood, came out that he was fired. And then the next day, no, he wasn't. Now, there's so many bizarre factors in this. But if you're unaware, we've talked about Brent before. He is a bad man. He's a bad man who stands on a pile of dead babies, who got laws shut down, specifically, the big one gets a lot of attention. There were other things he was involved in, but the big one in Louisiana, before the Dobbs decision, before Roe v. Wade was overturned, Louisiana was going to do it anyway. They're going to go and fully ban abortion and criminalize it as murder. It was everything. This is as far as I read in the bill. Maybe someone has some details on it that I'm from a distance I wasn't aware of, but it seemed to be everything that we would want. And he helped get it shut down. He's used his position for personal gain. He's used his position to promote gun restrictions against the will of the Southern Baptist Convention. He praised Biden for stepping down as a selfless decision, even though it's obviously political. Even if he decided to step down himself, it's not a selfless decision. It's politically motivated. He knew he had no chance if he was aware. But then we see the politics get in the way. We see two sides fighting. Now, the problem is people don't realize that the sides were the left and the left. The chairman of the trustees, he had, the details we have so far, he had consensus to fire Brent. But they hadn't taken a formal recorded vote. Maybe there are some receipts we don't know about. It seems like he's not going to produce them, even if there were. He became the fall guy, and he realized his plan didn't work. But he had consensus, allegedly, his claim. Others try and claim different. Acted upon it, and then when just a firestorm erupted, secular media going crazy. Russell Moore just pulling every string he could. The other trustees backed down. And then they got rid of the chairman instead, who is a total radical woke pastor. So why was he going after someone who presumably aligns more with him than, well, definitely than an actual conservative person, someone who would represent the majority of Southern Baptists? So what was the plan? Well, we don't know exactly, but just like with the DSA, infiltrating, changing a movement on the left to then be a Marxist movement, we can only imagine that it was going to be something along the same sort of lines. It was politicking, not for the sake of recovering the SBC, but making it worse. This is why when you see something that seems good on the surface, you need to look behind it. What is the intent? What are they doing? What are they going to replace? Who are they going to replace the person with? What is the new ideology that's going to be put and installed in? Now, I want to wrap things up with, I started off talking about two different types of people, and I want to bring you the third. The third is the evangelist. If I am a shield helping to protect the people behind me, again, those powerful people of faith behind me, that are doing heavy lifting inside the church, the simple sort of heavy lifting, not the teaching and training, but the taking care of people, being an example to the children, showing what faith looks like, praying for people, giving us that support, keeping us from getting too exhausted and weary. If I'm a shield, if my grandma is I'm trying to think of an armor analogy, but I don't think there's really an armor analogy. But if she's, someone behind the scenes doing work. Well, she was a former nurse. Well, let's just go with that. That works. If I'm a shield, she's a nurse behind, taking care of me, taking care of others, taking care of everyone. Third person, the evangelist, is a sword. You need to understand where you fit in. Are you a shield? Are you a sword? Or are you a nurse? We need more swords. Because guess what? I can be a shield all day long, but what am I going to do? I'm going to run up and try and bash people with my shield? No, I got to pull out the sword. And yes, every single one of us has been given a sword, but some people have been given extra skill. They are skilled at evangelism. They just have a gifting that goes beyond what you can simply do through training. They have that, well, in this case, it's not natural talent, it's supernatural talent, granted by God, not just by nature. So, we need those people. You find an evangelist, get them on evangelizing. It's one of my big frustrations inside the church, where we make deacons into something other than deacons. Whether that's turning them functionally into pastors, whether that's turning them into just kind of people, or they're in charge of maintenance around the building, things of that nature. No. They're there for service. In fact, you look at someone like my grandma, that's kind of example of deacon-like behavior. I'm not saying she's deacon. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the fact of, you need people with simple faith. You need people that care about serving. Because that's their job. Their job is serving people. Their job is work. Pastor gets up, rallies the troops, trains the troops. Deacons get out, they serve, they take care of the troops. What do the troops do? They have to go out. They have to take the swords, go out, fight. Start poking people. I talked about this last week, but I'm going to reemphasize it here in the context of what we're talking about now. If we want to see change, we want to identify what's going on. We want to be clear about what's going on. We want to be clear about what is and isn't Marxism. We want to be clear about what the tactics are, who's infiltrating, what they're saying. But it's all for the sake of being clear about those things so we can counter their moves. The defenders can defend, put up the shield where it needs to be, so that the nurses and doctors can take care of people behind them, and the people with the swords can charge forward. We need to be effective. We need to know the tactics. We need to know where we fit in, and we need to act accordingly. I think one of the biggest things I see online right now is far too many people trying to be swords when they're shields. Too many people trying to be shields when they're actually a doctor or a nurse. People trying to be thinking, oh, I can't be on the front lines. I can't do evangelism. So I'm going to just stay back and try and be a doctor, try and be a nurse. And they end up hurting people or just being less effective. No, grab your sword, go forth. It's one of the things we all need to be doing, but especially the people that have been gifted for that. Get out there and evangelize, because the way that we're going to turn things around is by countering the moves that are coming against us and thrusting forward on the attack. The attack is evangelism. The defense includes things like politics. That's not where the sword comes in. Well, okay, government's been given the sword to punish the evildoer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about restoring the country when it comes to its moral character, when it comes to its spiritual character, when it comes to, pretty much everything. Emotional character, intellectual character, heart, soul, mind, strength. All of them. Politics becomes a shield in that, not a sword. People are treating it like it's the sword, the solution, the change. No, evangelism is that part. Politics is going to defend things. We can help hold the line there. We can counter wicked ideologies there. But where the attack is, where the advancement's going to come, is in getting the gospel out there and transforming lives. At the same time, we need to respect and lean on those people, the nurses and doctors behind the lines that we are defending, so that they can be useful, that they can take care of the swords and the shields. They can take care of the people within the church. They can be examples to younger people. They can help providing relief, providing prayer. We need to work together better. Because what we're seeing, I mean, it's been 2 crazy weeks back to back. And the best Christian responses are more about complaining than they are solutions. Now, what's the difference between a complaint and pointing out a problem? A complaint doesn't provide a solution. Pointing out an error, pointing out a problem, provides a solution. What's the solution in this case? Well, there are many. As we dig down to the details, you can get into the nitty-gritty of things, but the basic overview right now is this country needs people to get into alignment, to defend where they need to defend, to attack where they need to attack, and to serve and care for people where they need to serve and care for people. We need to get our priorities straight. If we can't do it within the church, what hope do we have? What hope do we have to do it in the rest of society? We need to get ourselves in alignment. We need to get things healthy, and we need to charge forward. This really is just an introduction to those sort of ideas. But I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's given you some things to think about. This podcast was a lot more about sparking conversation and thought than it is about getting into all the little details. But if you've been following us for any period of time, we get into the details. You got to do both. Sometimes you got to get people to see the forest for the trees. And then sometimes you got to walk into the forest and study the individual trees. You need to have both perspectives. So I hope this has been useful. If it has been useful, consider doing things like, comment, share, subscribe. Because if it was helpful to you, it was helpful to someone else. So if you don't think it was helpful, let me know. I'm willing to take feedback, both reasonable, positive critiques, and if you want to just complain, I'll hear you out. If you want to give a ridiculous complaint, well, don't expect the most... I'm not going to be rude, but don't expect a constructive answer because you're not providing a constructive base. I'm willing to hear critiques. I'm willing to hear criticism. I'm willing to hear things that go against what I'm promoting, but you got to be clear about it. You got to be clear about what you're critiquing as well. But I love to hear from people just regardless. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. Hope this has been helpful. God bless you. And remember, don't go woke.